Welcome back, family. I have a really amazing episode for you today. Today, we're going to talk about some things that I've seen project managers stumble on. I've even stumbled on them myself, meaning that sometimes I thought a terminology or a concept was used in a particular way and it wasn't. So, this is why it's important to watch episodes and listen to episodes like this, is because of my goal today, I hope that I can under promise, but yet over deliver on today's episode. Today's episode is really entitled Top Project Management Terminologies. These are things that you truly want and need to know. And if it goes well, I'll do a part two because I got 25 more in my belt. Like, it was hard picking these 25 that we're going to discuss. So a different approach today. If you're new to the episode, I go by the name of ED. For all you smart and intelligent folks out there, listen, that just simply means Ed. Today is going to be exciting. I'm super excited. If you guys can't tell, we just need to jump into the material and see what we can come away with. So the first item I want to talk about is scope. See, family, you have to understand what scope is. Scope really defines goals, deliverables, tasks, costs, deadlines that the team is what will need to make. One of the things I always say is and we're going to touch on this pretty soon, but I'm just going to give you guys a appetizer. You want to always know about these things called scope, cost, and time and quality, because that is part of the iron triangle, or the what we call what is another keyword besides iron triangle? There's another word, I can't think of it right now, but family, it's important to understand those particular pieces, and you're going to see why as we go through these different concepts. So understanding what scope is. If you don't understand scope, think again about it as being the deliverables, or what did we agree on and what we said we were going to do. Because a lot of times you'll have scope creep, which is another terminology, but let's keep it moving. Work breakdown structure. Sometimes we call these WBS. This is a hierarchical diagram that breaks down the entire scope of the project into more smaller manageable components. So as you'll see it, you'll have a top, and then and it just gets smaller and smaller. Reason why I like the WBS, especially when it's more collaborative, meaning that everyone is getting involved. It's just not the project manager sitting there in a silo saying, okay, these are all the tasks, let me put it in a WBS and then come back to the team. No. That's not how you build a WBS. I've seen it done that way. I've done it that way, but it wasn't accurate. It's really fun when you have your stakeholders who are engaged, because as they're seeing these tasks be broken down into smaller manageable components, you kind of see that sense of like, okay, we can do this. Like, as a project manager, the whole time, because in your mind, when you start getting really good at this, you start being able to break them down. Like, okay, all right, this task, if I could break this down into 3 manageable pieces to get the team motivated to move forward to execute on. And then again, it's continuously ongoing refinement. So I'll say these 3 pieces is structural decomposition, collaborative development, and ongoing refinement. Again, it's WBS, or what we call work breakdown structure. I won't even say numbers. We're just going to have a good time with this. Risk management. Family, risk management is one of those things. I'm even thinking about going after my risk management certification, is because of the fact that I really don't believe risk management is taken as serious as it should be. What do you mean, ED? What I mean by that is that there was a time where every meeting that I would have, weekly meeting with the stakeholders, I would ensure that was the first thing on the agenda is risk. I want to know what the risks that we've identified already, and then I also want to know any risks that we haven't identified. Why do we want to do this? We want to do this is because, and one of the things too, sometimes I'll see, especially new project managers forget, and I'll even say seasoned project managers, because they get comfortable, is that they forget about the internal and external risk. Sometimes we get caught up in the internal thing of things, and we forget about the external pieces of what the risk is, and then what is the risk mitigation strategy to actually address this, whether positive or negative. So again, risk management. I'm probably going to do a whole. If you guys are really liking this, again, I'll probably start doing more with slides. And by doing more with slides, I'll probably do a whole risk management thing I have put together that I haven't even presented yet. So this would be exciting to see how you guys take that. All right, stakeholder management. Again, this is another key terminology. Like without people, I always say this, without people, it will be very challenging to lead projects. I know everyone's getting nervous about AI, like, oh, it's going to take my job and this and that. But there's certain things that AI would not be able to do from a human touch for us people. Of course, it's going to be able to execute in the more administrative tasks. But when it comes to effective stakeholder management, this is your foundation. This is so critical. If you do not get this right, you might as well kiss your project goodbye, literally, because it's going to be a long day. Every time you come into the office or every time you get on a call, it's going to be long and frustrating because you're like, why can't we get these stakeholders moving? Well, did you identify all the stakeholders? Did you analyze the stakeholder? Did you be proactive and become more engaged? And did you monitor the stakeholder over the entire piece of the project? I told you, family, I'm coming to over deliver. I just don't want to give you a terminology and say stakeholder management and a one-liner and go on, because that's not really giving you value. This is, you're not learning what these things mean. So when you're in these interviews and with a hiring manager, and there's like, well, what is stakeholder management? Well, stakeholder management is critical to a project to be successful, whether individual or groups who have interests, that's the key word, interests, or can be affected by the actual project. So again, that is stakeholder management. Let's move on to the next one, milestones. Listen, milestones are really true a significant key point in the project. And what it does is indicate that this major deliverable is completed, more or less of you taking all these tasks and rolling them up into a WBS. And once these tasks are completed, this milestone is done. So when you're building out your milestone, you want to make sure you have a effective milestone planning, meaning to ensure that your milestones are measurable, time-based, and linked to the overall project goal when it comes to these projects. All right, let's move on to the next point, baselining. There are 3 baselines that I want you guys to be cognizant of. You have your schedule baseline, you have your cost baseline, and you have your scope baseline. So schedule baseline. So what is a baseline? So what happens is normally time, let's say you get a project, you connected with the team, you guys have planned everything. You're like, okay, we had our schedule locked in. This is what we're going to do. Okay, let's lock it in. This is how I remember when you lock it in, you're saying, hey, we believe that based on our planning efforts and everything that we're looking at, this is where we really feel like we're going to land at. So you lock that baseline in, or basically lock the schedule in and say, we're going to finish on this particular date. Now, when that changes, let's say you are waiting, I've seen this happen where we were waiting, expecting equipment to be there a month earlier, and it ended up being 3 months late. And so we had to literally go back. We had to go through CAD and get a change, as far as, because anytime one of these items are affected, meaning or impacted, meaning if the schedule baseline is impacted, you probably going to bet that the cost or scope is potentially going to be impacted. So again, schedule baseline is really your approved project schedule. Your cost baseline is really your approved budget or spending plan for the project. And then, of course, your scope baseline is really defined as the approved project requirements, deliverables for your actual project. And again, if someone say, hey, are you going to baseline your schedule? It's, again, basically, like I said, locking it in and saying that this project schedule is approved. All right, let's move on to the next item. The next item here is talking about the deliverables. What are deliverables? Being able to define deliverables, range of deliverables, and deliverable management. That's just really the breakdown of that. Deliverables are really tangible or intangible outputs. Again, that's the key word, outputs, not results. Outputs is what am I getting from the result of the work that you're doing? So what can I expect? And then what is the and then you could just look at the range of deliverables and then basically managing those particular pieces. Let's move on to the next one. Gantt chart. Henry Gantt. Henry Gantt created the Gantt chart. And really what it is, I'll take it from a three-pronged approach. First of all, the Gantt chart really provides you a visual representation. It really shows you the project timeline, including tasks, duration, and dependencies. And then plus it's a collaborative tool. It allows project managers and stakeholders to work together so they can identify potential risk and or issues that may come up about. And then from a comprehensive overview, it really incorporates more of a detailed look on your milestones, your risk allocation, percentage completed, and it's just a holistic view of the overall project schedule, not project plan, because you guys know if you listen to the latest episode where I talked about the difference between a project management plan and a project schedule. So again, this is part of the project schedule. Let's move on to our next item. PMO. Again, family shameless plug, but the PMO book, I know. Please don't be mad at me. Still been every time I think we're ready for it, I was like, I need to go back. So again, this book is coming soon. PMO is really around the mindset. It's not going to talk about. I may have a little bit of strategy and tactics in there, but it's really about the mindset. So what about the PMO? What does the PMO acronym PMO stand for? Project Management Office. Project Management Office is really just standardized project management. So basically saying, okay, the governance of project management, and then what are the best practices? How do we get resources in to support the projects that we're taking on? And then from a reporting and analytical standpoint to say, how are these projects performing? Do we need to tweak any of our governance? Do we need to tweak any of our frameworks? Do we need to be going to a Scrum framework versus using a predictive approach? Predictive being more of a waterfall approach. So again, family, PMOs are so important. That's why I wrote the book. I know you guys really weren't feeling the content, but I know that if you really get involved and start understanding PMOs a lot more, they are really there to support you, protect you as a project manager, coordinator, program, etc. So look at the PMO and make sure you pick up that book when I put it out. Project governance. So project governance basically, taking a three-pronged approach, again, defining roles and responsibilities. They empower project managers, and then a continuous oversight and alignment. I want to park there real quick about continuous oversight and alignment. What makes the governance over projects important is that it really reviews the whole purpose is being able to connect with that project manager and understand, hey, you're out there, you're dealing with this data day in and day out. What is working well and what is not working well? What do you recommend that we should do? And these are the type of conversations that should be going on, especially in your PMO. But a lot of times that doesn't happen. It's more of a dictatorship of saying, this is how we want projects led and ran, and we're not making any adjustments or adapting at all. And you're like, well, the industry has kind of moved on. We're leveraging a Scrum framework, or we're keeping an agile mindset. Like, no, we're not using that. So again, family, if you're in that type of PMO or that type of governance, I'm going to tell you, whew, if it's not a partnership and it's more of a, like I said, a dictatorship where they're telling you and they're not actually leading projects, yeah, you may want to rethink some things. You may want to find a way where you can get their attention so they can understand the importance of, hey, I'm out here leading projects on a day in and day out. So I know that the waterfall approach, or basically predictive approach, is not going to fit this particular project. Can we look at leveraging a Scrum framework because we don't have solid requirements? All we know is the customers this is their vision, and they're thinking about this, all these things. So again, family, I know I went on a rant there because I'm really passionate about the PMO, especially because they can really bring in great and amazing project governance as long as they collaborate with the actual project manager. All right, let's move on to the next one. RACI chart. RACI stands for responsible, accountable, consult, and inform. Listen, responsible meaning the individual who's responsible for that particular task or deliverable. Accountable would be somebody that is basically accountable for the successful completion of the task or deliverable. Normally, this again would be a project manager or sponsor or SME. And then the consultant this is where the stakeholder or subject matter expert who should be consulted for input and feedback on the task and deliverable. And then the last and final one, which is informed. This is for individuals who need to be kept informed about the progress or status of the deliverable. Hey, family, I know we have been going for more than 15 minutes, and I want to offer you a special treat. For those that do stick through here, I want to give you this deck that I created. So put in the comments, give me this deck, please. And again, I still owe the project status for those who put the project status report in there. So again, leave that. If you're listening to on the pod, then please just reach out to me on Instagram. It's just my name, Edward Koch Jr. Look forward to hearing from you. All right, let's jump back into the content. Waterfall methodology. What is a waterfall methodology? It is basically a sequential project management approach where each phase must be completed before actually moving on to the next one. That's why I love this graphic here where it kind of shows how it looks. But really, when you look at it, it's more of a phase gate approach. So meaning, let's look at initiating. So we start at initiating, then we move to planning, and then from planning we move to but each one of these have a stage gate. Maybe for initiating, in order to move into the planning section, you need to have the project charter and your stakeholder register authorized. I'm just using these examples because different organizations have different requirements or different artifacts that need to be in place before you can move on to the next stage gate. So again, family, understanding the phase gate model, or I should say the waterfall model, is more of a methodology that is mostly used in project management. And this, when you use this, is normally when you have a clear understanding or it's clearly defined of what your requirements are and what you plan on doing. All right, let's move on to the next one. Agile. I used to think for so long that and still doing my homework, and I've told you guys before, I'm probably going to do the ACP, and so I can also coach and train you guys on the ACP as well. But I got to go through the process. I may even show you the behind the scenes of me going through that. Haven't decided on that yet, but let's talk about where we are today. One thing about Agile is it is a mindset. It has, so Scrum and Kanban are the tools that you could use to actually lead a project. But Agile is more of the mindset. It is becoming so popular that everybody's like, well, we're going to be agile. And agile just basically means being adaptable, meaning we're going to test this out. I call it running many experiments to see what works. And then once they find out, like, okay, maybe we need to flex it up. So it's really about flexibility around communication and just continuous improvement, or what we sometimes call Kaizen. Let's move on to our next point. Critical path. There's so many people that I even used to get this wrong a lot, family. That's why I always laugh when I see it. But critical path is really the longest time to complete the actual project. So let me break that down a little bit better. So critical path is the sequence of tasks within a project that takes the longest time to complete. It represents the activities that must be finished on time for the entire project to stay on schedule. How do you break this down normally with the critical path? So let me give you three. There's four here, but I'll give you three of them. Determine a critical path by analyzing the project schedule and identifying the longest chain of dependent tasks. 2, monitor and manage critical path closely and for any delays, issues, basically any impacts to the project completion date. And then the third one is Ensure resources are allocated appropriately for the critical path tasks to minimize, this is the key word, family, risk and or delays on the project momentum. And then the final one, I want to just go ahead and close it out, is really develop a contingency plan or an alternative approach to address any potential issues or bottleneck. Let's move on to our next one. Triple constraint. This is what I was looking for. I was talking about earlier the iron triangle, but triple constraint is more or less around those four pieces: scope, cost, time, and quality. And these are the most important parts of a project besides everything else. But when one is affected, though, or I should say one is impacted, start looking at your, let's say, using an example, let's say cost uh, had went up. Okay, if cost went up and or was impacted, I probably need to look at my schedule. Probably going to need to look at my scope as well as quality, because somewhere else they may be impacted. And if they're not impacted now, they might be impacted down the line. So again, the triple constraints: scope, cost, time, and quality. Let's move on to our next one. Business case. This just justify the project, the project, outlining the problem and or opportunity. So what a business case really truly does is defines the problem of the project aims to what the project aims to address and seeks to capitalize on it. It evaluates cost and benefits. So basically, a business case will always include a comprehensive cost benefit analysis, and as well as assessing any tangible and intangible benefits that the project can deliver. And then finally, securing stakeholder support. When you have a seriously, when you do have a well-crafted business case, it is such a powerful tool, because it helps when, if you're having to work on the project charter or you and your sponsor are working together, it really does help when it comes to that piece. Let's move on to the next item: issue management. Issue management is a really good terminology that you hear, and we'll just really unpack this of just saying the ability of just being able to detect issues early, proactively monitoring and monitoring communication, and ensuring that issues before they escalate. And then when if it does, you want to prioritize and escalate any issues based on potential impact. And then the last two is developing resolution strategies in order to address any of these that before they actually happen. Because sometimes, we'll get comfortable and we won't put, okay, if this does happen, what the approach is. No, we have to make sure that we're staying on top of that. And then you always hear me say documentation beats conversation. So document and track it along the way in the project. Let's move on to our next item here. Project sponsor. Listen, a project sponsor is normally an individual, and it can be a group of people that really provide the financial resources or the strategic support when it comes to the project success. So when you look at this, when you look at a sponsor is really that person, that individual, or that group of people that has made a decision to say, hey, we took our business case and we put it together, and now we believe we have something. We're going to the PMO, or we're going to the executives first, maybe, because I've seen that happen when you may go to the executive, pitch what you're going to do. They say, yes, this is a go, run it through our PMO. They go through a PMO process. And then at that point, they find a project manager. That project manager and sponsor connect. Now, if you're not having that opportunity to connect with your project sponsor, that's another red flag, family, because it's important that you talk with your sponsor to figure out what are their visions behind the project. Because again, we have to keep in mind a project is a temporary endeavor. This is not a program, or is not a ongoing business as usual. So it's not certain. There may be certain clues you may be able to pick up, but a lot of this you're going to have to figure out on your own. All right, let's move on to the next item, which is scope creep. Listen, scope creep is really more or less where additional requirements are added without adjusting the corresponding items like time, cost, and resource. This is the scope creep is one of those things where, especially when you have an ambitious team where they're like, oh, I bet you the customer, like this, or we can put this in. And you're like, stop. No, This is what the scope is. This is what we agreed on. And it really happens a lot of times, family, if there's not clear communication, and being able to set boundaries up front. That's why I would say you have to set the expectation up front, because if you don't set the expectation up front, what will happen is your stakeholders will get frustrated because they had a certain expectation. And if you would have communicated the expectation, you wouldn't be there. All right. Let's move on to the next item, risk register. Risk register is key. If you don't have a risk register or issue log, you are not leading a project. You are just playing. Listen, family, what I mean by that is that a risk register really, and you want to keep that risk register up to date. For me, I normally look at my risk register, if not every day, every other day, but most of the time it's every day, just to make sure, just to check with the people that own those particular risks. Hey, is there anything going on, anything that's changed? And sometimes they could get irritated with me, but I have to do my job. And doing my job is making sure none of these risks get flipped to an issue. And if they do flip to the issue, then I should have already been ready as the project manager, as well as the person that's responsible for it. So a risk register is basically a log in which you are being proactive versus reactive. All right, let's move on to the next item, issue log. I talked about the risk register. Issue log is more or less where you track all your issues. What's your response? How you're going to prioritize this? What's the transparency and communication? Also, with being able to use these artifacts, you'll be able to take these two artifacts once everything is closed out and see if there's any similarities when you pick up the next project, because you'll be able to look back and see. That's why it's important to do that lesson learn register throughout the entire part of the actual project. And again, an issue log is basically after the item has flipped from a just being a risk to an actual issue, it makes it on the issue log. Let's move on to the next item, project charter. We know a project charter is basically, it provides you, this is what authorized the project manager. Project charter provides a high-level overview of the project objective, scope, key stakeholders, cost, high-level schedule. What else that's on that piece there? Because I've seen 1-pager project charters, I've seen 2 or 3-page project charter, but really want to think about this is, like I said at the beginning, a high level document that, again, that really authorized the initiation of the project as well as the project manager. And this is where you should start receiving support and things of that nature. What else should I talk about the charter? Because this is a big piece here. You may also have on your charter key components or constraints, stakeholders. This is when, again, the project manager authority takes over at that piece. And finally, I have 2 more left, family, is project plan. We know a project plan is based off your subsidiary plans, like your scope management plan, your cost management plan. These are subsidiary type plans. So again, know the difference between a project management plan or project plan versus a project schedule, because a lot of times people will get those two mixed up, because they mean they'll say, hey, can I see your project management plan? And they're meaning the project schedule, but they're saying the project management plan, and that's not accurate. Of course, if you're watching and listening to me, family, I want to make sure that you say the accurate thing. This is why I'm going over these terminologies, so you can understand them. I want you to play this back many times, because there's some great information here. And like I said, we're going to our last and final one here. Type in the comments that you want these decks. This slide, I'll definitely get them to you. I'm still working on the other one, trying to find a place for all of this to go for you, but I think we're almost there, family. So the last and final one is project schedule. Project schedule is more or less of, this is your roadmap of how we're going to get there, meaning consistent of tasks, milestones, dependencies, anything of that nature, basically around schedule. Is just really a timetable that helps a project team coordinate activities and allocate resources effectively. Hey, family, I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode. I enjoyed delivering it today. I go by the name of ED. We just went over 25, again, family, 25 key terminologies that will really help you. If you're ever getting ready for an interview, you should throw this on and say, okay, what is a project schedule? Okay, he said a project schedule consists of this, and this. So check those things out, family. We will probably do part 2 based on the feedback that I get back from the family. I hope it's good feedback, but if not, we'll adapt and adjust as we always do. Until next time, well, I should say, my slogan. Until next time, I'm out. Thank you.